friends, welcome back to the Avocado Toast Budget. If you're new here, my name is Lexa, and today we are going over my top tips for using credit cards responsibly. If you've been here, you know that I actually love credit cards, but you might also know that I actually racked up $20,000 of credit card debt and then managed to pay that all off in a year. But that does not mean that I don't like credit cards. I actually now exclusively spend all of my money on a credit card because I absolutely love the rewards and the perks that they have to offer. But from going to constantly maxing out my credit card to being able to spend money only on credit cards and still pay them off every month, I have learned a lot along the way about how to use credit cards responsibly. And today we're going to talk all about that. That way you can set yourself up for success and you can feel confident spending on a credit card, knowing you can pay it off every month and taking full advantage of those rewards. First things first is you've got to stop spending money on your credit card to buy things that you can't afford. Now, this sounds like an obvious thing, but a lot of times people get into credit card debt because they view their credit card as an emergency fund. Even if they're not actively putting purchases on their credit card that they know they can't afford, they have that idea in the back of their mind that, oh, well, if I'm living paycheck to paycheck, that's okay because I have my credit card here and I could always just put it on my credit card and worry about it later. And when you get into that mindset, it makes it a lot easier to start justifying a little overspending until you find yourself not able to pick up that spending by the time that your credit card bill is due. So you've got to have a big mindset change where you are no longer willing to put money on your credit card for things that you can't afford. We'll talk about ways to figure that all out, figure out if you can afford it and to stay on track. But I just wanted to mention this right off the bat because that is kind of the foundation to everything else that we're talking about in this video. The next thing that I highly recommend is to put a freeze on your credit card until you've paid off that credit card debt. Because while I love credit cards and the rewards that they have to offer, I find it really hard to manage paying off credit card debt and also actively spending money on a credit card. If you decide that's the route you want to go, I do have some tips for you that we'll touch on, but just as like an overall tip, I really think it's a lot easier to manage tracking your debt payoff progress and not cycling back into credit card debt if you just freeze your card and no longer spend it. I don't think that you should shut the account in total because that can really fuck your credit score, but there are tons of ways to make it a lot harder for you to spend on your credit card, including freezing the cards that you have, taking the time up front to delete them from like your Apple Wallet or Apple Pay, or to delete it from like Amazon or the places that you have it saved on your computer, because I know my computer will like auto save all of my credit card information, so I never have to like physically have it on hand. Go ahead, delete all of that, make it as hard as possible for you to spend on that credit card. And then whenever you have paid off all of your debt, then you can adopt some of these things that we're talking about in this video. My next big tip for using credit cards responsibly is getting on a budgeting system that works for you. It might sound weird that one of my tips about credit cards is actually budgeting, but that is because that is the foundation to spending money wisely on a credit card. It wasn't until I started using YNAB that I felt confident enough to spend money on a credit card knowing that I had that money to pay it off. I tried weird systems where I would like transfer my money into savings every time that I spent it on a credit card. That way when my credit card came due, I had that money in savings, but inevitably I would forget to transfer, or I would justify purchases that I didn't have enough money to transfer into saving, and then I just ended up cycling right back into my old ways. So getting on a solid budgeting system that helps you to track credit cards is such a big help when it comes to spending on credit cards responsibly. I talk more about navigating credit cards inside of YNAB in this video here. Just know YNAB has changed some of their verbiage, but this video still completely applies. If you're someone who struggles to not overspend on a credit card, but you want to be able to spend responsibly on a credit card, I highly recommend YNAB. It's like the only budgeting app that I've ever found that treats credit cards the same way in your budget that they actually work in real life, and that makes a huge difference. I know at all points in time that I have my spending on my credit card covered inside of my YNAB budget. And that has helped me to feel so much more confident with putting pretty much all of my spending on a credit card. My fourth tip is to avoid the credit card float. And that is the idea that you don't actually have the money in your bank account to pay off the purchases you're making today, but you will have it whenever payday rolls around and your credit card bill is due. A lot of people get stuck in this credit card float where technically they're not able to afford that purchase when they make it, but because their credit card bill isn't due for a few weeks later, then whenever they get paid, they have that money and it feels like you're affording it because you're never actually carrying money month to month on a credit card and you're not paying any interest. But technically, you are not only living paycheck to paycheck, but your credit card is kind of giving you a 1 to 3 week buffer to give you some more time to make money to cover those purchases that you're making. Be mindful of this because I see this a lot. I did this a lot as well before I was going into credit card debt, where if I did not have the money on hand, I was okay with that purchase because I knew I could cover it at my next paycheck, but then I just kind of get stuck in that cycle and you're never actually getting to a point where you can afford the things that you are buying at that moment. I think that this whole tip brings up a really good point that just because you're not carrying a balance or paying interest does not mean that you are actually using credit cards responsibly and to the best advantage that you can. So just make sure that you always have the money on hand to pay your card in full today, not next week whenever you get paid. Tip number 5 is to be aware of any annual fees on your cards and know whether they are worth paying. This goes both for cards you already have and definitely cards that you plan on getting. Sometimes cards have really seemingly low annual fees, like less than $50 a year, but if the perks the credit card offers you are not worth those fees, then it's not worth getting. However, some cards have more expensive annual fees, like $500 a year, but if you are using them quite often and you travel a lot or you really enjoy those perks that it offers, then it might be worth the more expensive annual fee. That's easier to evaluate before you get a card, but I also think it's important to evaluate with the cards you already have. Sometimes we'll have cards that we're stuck with from days when we didn't know a lot about credit cards and we're paying annual fees on cards we don't really get much use out of. And while it might seem that upfront it's not worth that annual fee, keep in mind that your credit card might be keeping your credit score afloat if it is one of your oldest lines of credit, and it might be worth paying that annual fee just to keep your credit score up. For me, this is the case with my Capital One card. It doesn't have the best rewards compared to my other ones. It has like a $40 annual fee, but for me, it's worth it because it is one of my oldest lines of credit. So for me, it's worth keeping it open to keep my credit score up, and I'll just pay the few dollars a month, and I am good with that decision. But you're gonna wanna evaluate whether it is worth it for you and your credit score and how long that you've had the credit card open for to decide if the annual fees that you're paying are worth the cards that you have. And my last tip that I have is to educate yourself on the cashback perks that your cards offer and cards that you potentially want to get to make sure that you're getting the most out of your credit card rewards. Some cards offer you more cash back on certain categories. Sometimes they'll even offer bonuses on certain stores or types of things purchased. And if you want to take full advantage of your rewards that you're getting on your credit cards, you want to be aware of which credit cards to use on which purchases. This doesn't have to be like anything too in-depth or crazy. Just know a general knowledge of what the cashback or point system is for your cards so you can decide when you want to use them. This also goes for any bonus points or offers that a credit card has. If you are looking into a new credit card and they have a really awesome bonus rewards offer, usually there is some sort of caveat to it, meaning you usually have to spend a certain amount of money on your card within a certain time frame. And you want to make sure that whatever that is realistic for you. For example, I just got the Chase Sapphire Preferred. They have the best bonus offer that they've ever had going on right now of 100,000 bonus points, which basically equals like around $1,200 toward travel. But one of the big caveats of that is that you have to spend $4,000 in 3 months. So I had to go back through my budget and make sure that that was realistic for me and that I wouldn't be stuck in a situation where I either didn't reach that bonus or I felt like I needed to spend more on my card in order to meet that cashback bonus. So that is it on my tips for navigating spending money on credit cards responsibly. I really hope that you enjoyed and you learned something cool. If you did, please remember to give this video a big thumbs up. It really helps out the YouTube algorithm, helps boost this video to the top. That way more people can find this content, and I will see you all next time. Bye.